Let me help you. You let your ego cloud your judgment. There is no sanity clause. Welcome to Legends of Gotham, where we talk about Fox's hit series Gotham, or the animated adaptation of the seminal Alan Moore comic book, The Killing Joke, as we're doing tonight. I'm Bill Meeks.
And I'm Anne-Marie DeSimone.
And we are ready to hear what we thought about The Killing Joke. And
I'm going to listen to the voices in my head and then...
And we're also ready to rock, I think.
I want to rock!
And we don't have two little weird midgets in S&M gear leading us around.
There was three. There was two boys and a girl, so I found it hilarious. Hilarious.
Yeah.
Life!
Lots of creepiness in this comic book slash animated movie, and we're going to get into all that. But we have a couple announcements right here, right up front. First of all, we wanted to let you guys know that if you're in the Florida area...
The whole Florida area.
The Florida area.
Specifically Tampa Bay,
next weekend on August 7th, we're going to be coming to you live from Tampa Bay Comic-Con. Now, we have a live panel. It's Sunday, August 7th at 11:30 a.m. in room 12 at the fabulous Tampa Convention Center.
Woohoo! Tampa Convention Center.
Where Tampa Bay Comic-Con is taking place. And it's going to be me and Anne-Marie. Mm-hmm. And also, if you guys are familiar with Bobby, who calls in every week, he's going to be there too.
Yay, Bobby!
So, because originally he came to us, he was Bobby from Bradenton.
Which
I guess is near Tampa.
Apparently.
Near enough for him to come anyway. So
Yay!
It'll be a good time. Next Sunday, August 7th, 11:30 a.m., room 12 at the Tampa Bay Comic-Con.
And if you are not in the Tampa Bay area, we are going to make no promises at this juncture, to see if we can possibly Facebook Live, because we don't sure what access we'll have to other equipment, but we've always got a cell phone. So we're going to try and Facebook Live.
Very true.
All or part of the stream, at least, or some of the back stage shenanigans.
There should be some way for me to record like a high quality version of the panel as well.
Yes.
And so, it'll be coming out to you live over the podcast feed. If you watch on YouTube, we'll be posting it on YouTube.
Yes.
Should be a lot of fun. We have a lot of Gotham trivia from the
Compliments of Gotham Addicts. Yes, thank you to them.
And then I believe the program says we're going to be discussing season 2 and speculating about season 3. We have to come up with a firm plan for all that.
Well, that sounded good when we applied 5 months ago. We were like, that sounds good. We'll do that.
But also that day, just FYI, we're going to go see the new Batman-related movie, Suicide Squad, with Bobby. And so next week, Tuesday, 8:30 p.m. EST, we're going to be back here talking Suicide Squad. So you get 2 special reviews 2 weeks in a row.
Two specials in one.
It's pretty sweet. Really. Pretty sweet. So keep an eye on that. And if you go see Suicide Squad, please let us know what you thought. legendsofgotham@gmail.com. Oh, and by the way, if you want to keep an eye out for those live streams from Tampa Bay Comic-Con, it's facebook.com/groups/Legends of Gotham.
We're sort of sending the page the way of the dinosaur and embracing the group so that you actually see what we post.
Grouping it up,
homies. And there's only 30 of us in the group versus 800, I think, on the page. So we'd like to see some crossover.
You know what else we're doing?
What?
We're going to shoot you in the spine with a rhyming episode summary. Anne-Marie, take it away.
Awful. What happens after one bad day? Joker's convinced that your mind goes away. Can Batman solve his bad clown conundrum? He'd turn into someone he shouldn't become. Will Gordon crumple? He lives by the book. Will he maintain his lawful outlook? Will the Batman engage in the thrilling choke? Laughter is deadly in The Killing Joke.
The Killing Joke, Anne-Marie, what'd you think? What'd you think, Anne-Marie?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was dead. And the joke killed me.
We should probably preface any of your opinions with the fact that you've never read the comic book.
I have never read the book.
People who listen to the show
will
not
be
surprised by.
They know that all Anne-Marie knows about Batman, she's learned from movies and the television show Gotham.
Very true.
I am not as crazy about this as many other people are. I don't know what specifically about it was, but something I was like, okay, waking up, watching this for the show, watching this. So it it wasn't, I don't know if it was over my head, which is highly possible, or I don't know. It's written for a specific person. It's written for fans of the Killing Joke comic book,
Yeah.
mostly,
Which you haven't read.
which I haven't read.
Yeah,
so
it's definitely a less than optimal adaptation of the source material.
Good to know.
I mean, like once you get into the Killing Joke part of it, it's pretty accurate, but at the same time, I think a lot of what makes the Killing Joke the comic book is because you can picture a lot of how people sound in your head. There's a lot.
That's with any book.
The artwork's a lot stronger too.
Is it?
Yeah. So, and then I said about a comic book, when you're reading a comic book, you control the pacing, where you might kind of ruminate on Batman saying this really profound line for a while, but when you're watching the thing,
You are at the mercy of the director.
exactly. And I like that was one of my complaints actually. Was some of the scenes felt way too like peppy, like they're like
Interesting, because I had scenes where I was like,
There were scenes too that were a little bit of a snooze fest, but there were also scenes where the cues were picked up so quick by the actors that you didn't really get a sense to like live in the lines, and that was a bit of a problem too.
okay.
But yeah, me overall, I liked it after the first half hour, but we'll talk about that later in great detail. But
Not in detail.
yeah, and it might not be the criticism you're thinking. Because I know there's a lot of people who are upset about one specific action involving a shirtless Batgirl, but we're going to be discussing all this stuff. But I figured we'd start in the overarching thing. I thought we should talk first about the actual Killing Joke, the
Actual joke.
the joke at the end of the story.
Help.
Now, this joke that the Joker tells is very symbolic and hints toward my favorite interpretation of the story. The nice thing about the story is there's so many ways you can take it and so many interpretations, and it's really good art that way. But first I figured I'd refresh your mind on the joke, and this is pretty much exactly from the comic.
He says pretty much. He had it memorized. He didn't have to look it up. He just checked it. There are like ums, and he knew them verbatim.
Okay, so here's the joke. See, there were these two guys in a lunatic asylum, and one night they decided they don't like living in an asylum anymore. They decide they're going to escape. So, like, they get up on the roof, and there, just across the narrow gap, they see the rooftops of the town stretching away in the moonlight, stretching away to freedom. Now, the first guy, he jumps right across with no problem. But his friend doesn't daren't make the leap. You see, he's afraid of falling. So then the first guy has an idea. He says, hey, I have my flashlight with me. I'll shine it across the gap between the buildings. You can walk along the beam and join me. But the second guy just shakes his head. He says, he says, what do you think I am, crazy? You turn it off when I was halfway across. So this is the joke that makes the Batman laugh, which is something you don't see very often.
No, you don't.
Yeah. This it kind of feels like if you don't understand what's going on here, you're like, what's going on? Yeah.
Hi, that's me.
You're kind of confused at the ending. Like, if nothing else, you maybe feel like Batman and the Joker kind of came together in this one moment, and that was that. But there's a lot more going on here, and it all ties into this joke. Okay. Now, there are two characters in the joke. There are two characters in the scene. Batman and the Joker are each a person in the joke. Batman,
I got that.
Batman is the man with the flashlight shooting a flight. At least this is my interpretation. I've read a few different interpretations of it too. But Batman's the man with the flashlight, shooting a flashlight across the gap to help the Joker back to sanity, to cross over to freedom. What Batman doesn't realize is that he's crazy too. Just like in the joke, the guy...
They're both escaping the asylum.
Exactly. And any help he could give the Joker wouldn't really be any help at all. The Joker can't walk on a flashlight beam, and the Joker realizes this too and understands any attempt to cross will only harm him in the long run, turning him maybe into a different kind of crazy or destroying him entirely. What?
Having a moment.
You're having a moment?
I'm having a moment. Walking along the light beam. I was assuming there was like an actual beam.
No, it was like a flashlight beam.
I thought he was lighting up the actual.
See, we're helping. But
I'm an idiot.
They both well, obviously the Joker understands it intimately because he has what Grant Morrison calls that hyper sanity. But they both understand the joke at the end of it. That's why Batman laughs. That's why they both laugh, and why, and by my opinion, my interpretation of the story, and I mean, to be fair, a lot of other people have floated this interpretation too. Batman decides that the only solution, and the one that he mentions and kind of foreshadows constantly throughout the story, is that he has to kill the Joker once and for all to bring an end to his reign of terror. This is why he brings his hands to the Joker's neck while they're laughing, and then we pan away, or in the comic book, the next panels are down on the ground. So you can't see. And then the Joker stops laughing right before we fade to black. So I feel that what happens there is Batman realizes the truth of this joke that the Joker tells to him, and realizes the only way he's going to end this once and for all is to kill the Joker. So they both share a laugh, and then the Batman takes his life. That's my interpretation. And Bobby over in the chat room at live.universebox.com says he thinks I had a very good interpretation too.
I didn't catch most of that while watching it twice.
Does it make you appreciate the story anymore to hear that?
Probably a bit more, yeah.
That's fair.
Because to me, there was no end.
Yeah,
it just sort of stopped.
It just kind of hangs there if you don't look at it in this.
But I didn't know to look for it.
Yeah.
So maybe they should have lingered actually a little more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, that was actually when I originally read the story back,
many
15, 16 years ago. That was my initial thing, too. I was just like, they understand each other for a moment, and then it's done. Mm-hmm. But then in consecutive rereadings of it and stuff, you come to realize, no, this is, I mean, it's mentioned so many times throughout the story that I'm going to kill you or you're going to kill me. This is the way it has to end unless you let me help you. And this scene, the Joker refuses Batman's help and gives him a very rational explanation why it wouldn't matter even if he did accept the help. Mm-hmm. And so Batman's left with no choice but to kill the Joker. Now, I know, in the overarching continuity of DC comic books and everything, this story is in continuity because we got Oracle back, Barbara Gordon's Oracle character out of the story. But it was intended originally by the original artist, Alan Moore, to be a one-off story. And I feel that it was because a couple years prior, he wrote a story called Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, which was supposed to be the final story of the Silver Age Superman. And tied up all the loose ends and all of his, because there were a lot of like subplots and A, B, C list characters and that whole mythos, and it tied up the entire mythos in a great big bow. And then the next big thing he wrote for DC Comics, it might have been Watchmen, but then this. So I think this was his attempt to tell the final Joker Batman story, the conclusion of their battle.
Interesting.
So that's what the Killing Joke means to me.
Okay, I kind of feel like I should put one of my points up here instead of where I did.
That's fine as long as you can keep track of it.
That's fine. Hold on, where were you? Where were you, little point? Oh, close. 1 second. Beep-a-deep-a-deep. Nope.
But yeah, such a good story, though.
Sorry.
Like, I really enjoyed the story.
Okay, here it was.
Okay.
See, it's because the bolding thing started doing good. Okay. So, did the Joker want to be caught, and did Batman really want to catch him? They were both putting up an okay fight, but then I really feel like they just wanted to sit in a therapy session together and work out all their baggage. Batman went in wanting to talk things out before resorting to murder, and Joker brought a prop gun to a fight. Honestly, I expected a bigger boom at the end of this story because it's the story. Mm-hmm. That was my little...
Yeah, well, I definitely feel like both characters realize that,
like they can realize that that's how it has to end. Mm-hmm. Excuse me, but it didn't feel like either of them were actually working towards that at that point. At that point, it just seemed like, literally they just needed a person to tell them to lay on a couch and talk it out.
Yeah, well, it definitely kind of builds to this culmination of that. And like Barbara Gordon says, he's taking it to the limit this time.
Right.
And in a lot of ways, I mean, you see Batman in his pursuit of the Joker is very unlike a Batman we normally see pursuing the Joker in that, he's taking it to the limit too. He's stopping at nothing. He's leaning on criminals that he has like a good relationship with, or as good as Batman can have with a criminal as like an informant or whatever. And he's just like wrecking stuff to try and get to the Joker this time because it has to stop. And I feel like they're both building towards something. And like I said, my original interpretation was that they were building to just a moment where they understood each other. Mm-hmm. But the older I've gotten, the more I feel like they both realize this is their final shot. That's why Joker presses. His thing is not to defeat the Batman. His thing is to defeat the idea of the Batman and what the Batman stands for. And because Batman in his the core of his being, he's a character who feels like the world can be saved and the world can be good. It just needs someone to help get it there.
Right.
And the Joker wants to prove to Batman
the other way around.
That it's nothing's inherently good, nothing is inherently evil. The only thing that separates
one bad day
is one bad day. Let's see. Over here, Bobby in the chat room says, I didn't feel like it was quite as ambiguous in the movie. If they had meant for the Joker to be killed in the movie, I feel like there would have been a sound of something snapping or cracking, not just silence. And he says, I like the ambiguous ending of the book. Very true. Like, I think, I don't think there was very much ambiguity in the movie because Batman continues laughing for several seconds after the Joker stops.
But I didn't notice that, which means I'm guessing the way that Bobby's saying, he may not have noticed that either, though he's much better at this stuff than I am. It wasn't obvious enough for me.
Yeah, and
if that's the ending they were going for.
I'm trying to remember exactly how it plays out in the book, but basically it does the same kind of... Would
you like me to pull it off the shelf?
It does the same kind of panning down thing, and it has the laughing sound effects, and then you see the police lights show up, and then there's just like a couple panels of silence. So I mean, depending on how you read the book, you could interpret that Batman and Joker just killed each other in that moment.
Yeah.
Too, but I think, Joker killed bats, probably.
Joker killed bats?
Or sorry, bats killed Joker.
I was like, that's literally the opposite of everything you've been building towards.
Okay, what I'm saying is that Batgirl kills Commissioner Gordon in this movie. No.
Well, that's quite the twist. Okay, he noticed. Okay, see, I knew Bobby would notice. Anne-Marie doesn't notice.
Yeah, Bobby in the chat room says that he did notice. He stopped laughing. Okay, well, you wanted to talk a little bit too, and we can go ahead.
We're going to sort of grow back into that. Okay.
Well, my point was rather long too. You wanted to talk a little bit about the Joker origin story, right?
Okay, I love a good origin story, and I enjoyed that this one combines a variety of stories that I'm familiar with through Gotham and talking to this guy. Mm-hmm. So we had the Red Hood gang, which I kind of enjoyed because I was like, I know this one. Very familiar to fans of Gotham. Kind of. I liked the way that it was presented. To the man who would become the Joker as protecting the key person on that job because they were the only one whose life mattered out of the group. Mm-hmm. Does the fact that their original target was a card factory impact the fact that he becomes sort of a Joker, like a playing card, Joker, any sort of... The hood itself, however, was ridiculous.
Yes, very
It's like
much
a cone with like...
Well, my interpretation, and I think this is, I don't think this isn't really my interpretation. This is just, kind of what it is. Mm-hmm. Is that the hood is crappy by design and the costume is garish by design. It's to give the police someone
to follow,
incompetent but memorable to focus on, while the real criminals do what they got to do.
Which completely makes sense.
Yeah.
The vat of chemicals. This always made sense to me because of the discolorations of his skin and his hair. Something physical obviously had to happen. However, I didn't think he'd get sucked all the way through like a tube. So that made sense in my world.
Yeah, because a version of this story from the Batman movie with Jack Nicholson and Michael Keaton.
Yes.
Yeah, because we watched that last summer.
We did with Jared Joseph. I just have to remember. Disgruntled / failed comedian. This explains all of his mannerisms and his behaviors. The perfect persona for a villain because it's hard when somebody's telling a joke for you to be scared of them, unless it's a really good. But I like where Gotham's going with the origin story of the Joker better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, Gotham could totally be.
It could go down a lot of this route, but we already have. But we couldn't because this is a good guy. Not a good guy, but he's not full on evil yet.
Yeah.
Whereas in Gotham, he's full on evil.
Yeah, I mean, but
We
could
just have
still
to
be,
go that extra.
We could still be, because I mean, we don't know what story Hugo Strange might have given him either. Maybe.
We don't know if he accepted a story, just like
Very true.
what's her face? Fish Mooney didn't accept a story.
That's
She
very
just got
true,
a power.
too. Yeah.
And all the, maybe all that Hugo Strange did to him is the discoloration, though he was very pale to begin with. So, it could already, that could be what he pulls from that.
Yeah, if Jerome goes full Joker, though, I could totally see this being the origin, him getting knocked into a vat of chemicals while on a heist with the Red Hood gang. Like, I could totally see that happening. I could definitely see this version of the Red Hood gang growing out of the version that was on the show.
Okay, that I'm okay with. That I can see.
Where it's some semi-competent criminals getting a patsy to wear a red hood kind of thing.
I could see that, but I don't see it being Jerome. I could see him maybe being a behind-the-scenes orchestrator, but he's not going to be heavily involved.
Bobby says in the chat room he was a good guy at first. I thought
he was
the
until
comedian.
The
comedian in this story.
Yeah, until the point that he accepted to do a hit to make his family some cash.
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts on that. We'll save them for a little later.
Yay.
But I wanted to touch, as long as we're talking about the origin, about the Joker's multiple choice past. Now, a lot of people use this line to justify the fact that the Joker doesn't and shouldn't have a real origin. Okay. But I interpret the line completely differently. Now, the quote is something like that. Something like that happened to me, I'm not exactly sure what it was. Sometimes I remember it one way, sometimes another. If I'm going to have a past, I prefer it to be multiple choice. Now, a lot of people are saying that means that the story, as it happens in this comic book, might be a completely,
wrong.
Cut from cloth work of fiction. I don't interpret it that way. I take it to mean that while the details might have went a little differently, maybe he was involved in the death of his wife. And maybe that's what led him there. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe the gangsters really weren't out to get him and the Red Hood gang was his thing or something. Okay. Like, I get the impression that this is basically what happened. But some of the details get kind of fuzzy when he thinks about it, just because it was a very traumatic experience for Mr. J.
Mr. J.
But, so I think that's all it is that he... depending on how he wants to interpret those events, the story can change. But these are the basic set of events that happened. I mean, it's kind of like, every time you see the Wayne's gun down and the bat flying through the study window and everything like that, it's a little different. And really, it ties back to the creator. But I mean, a lot of times when it's Bruce flashing back, he remembers it a little differently. Yeah. Or he remembers different details. And that's pretty
always
common.
The pearls, though. Always the pearls.
That's pretty common with a traumatic experience like that. Yeah. So I feel, I feel that, this is the definitive Joker origin story. Like, not to mention the fact that this is also the origin story he was given back in the 50s, back in the Silver Age. Right. And this is basically an adaptation, or the flashback part of it is basically an adaptation of that original story from back in the 40s, 50s, 60s. They did it a few times. But
of course, because who doesn't love reliving an origin story?
Yeah, although I think maybe the one addition that isn't pretty much like how that story went down is that I don't remember him having a dead wife in that original story. I could be wrong though. Yeah, I remember it just being he was just a hood who Batman knocked into a vat of chemicals and, he became the Joker. Okay. But he could have had that tragic element. But then again, with the way the comic code and stuff was back then, it doesn't seem likely.
Gotcha.
But, I don't think it weakens the character, though, overall, to have a definitive origin. I kind of, and I mean, especially this version of the origin, I think makes so much sense. And it makes him a great foil for the Batman, even down to their origin, that they both have have a similar
bad day.
origin, and they both went two very weird, different ways with it.
I have things on that.
Okay.
I have things on that. Okay, so I love that I finally completely understand the one bad day. Because obviously I've already known Batman's one bad day. I had no idea for realsies what the Joker's one bad day was, so this gave me some clarity with that. However, I don't believe that they had an equal bad day because their circumstances were different. The Joker was already choosing to go down the way of evil by choosing to get involved with those dudes, the Red Hood guys, for a heist. So he was already headed down the path. He was living in extreme poverty, and his family was taken by accident, not by violence or aggression. Batman, on the other way, chooses the side of the good. He was still a child when his bad day happened, so he was still innocent. He still had that, the fuzz of innocence. He was living the lap of luxury, and his family was taken through violence. So both of them basically push against what they were dealt. And they, so matter of circumstance, Joker's family is gone, and he's like, basically.
Yeah.
And Batman's is taken by that, so he pushes to try and redeem or to work against the evil that ruined his life, whereas the Joker chooses to embrace it because he has nothing else.
Yeah.
Batman, he's tucked into bed by Alfred every night, so he's good. So I think the differences are what truly made the difference for them. While they each did only have that one bad day, which completely turned them one way or the other, I don't believe it was an equal bad day to where they had to make the decision to be good or to be bad.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And I definitely think, the Joker's advanced age when he had his bad day
Makes a difference.
probably didn't help, because I mean, Batman was still young enough to where he had to develop the strength and the power to do what he wanted to do, and he had a lot of time to think about it. And like you said, he still had sort of the innocence of a child and that sense of justice, where the Joker had just been dealt a bad deal after bad deal after bad deal. I also think it's interesting that you bring up that, his wife was said, and Bobby says well said in the chat room.
Thank you, sir.
But that his wife was taken via an accident.
Well, that's all we know. That's all we're told.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, I think it's interesting that, Batman's parents, obviously, it wasn't planned for them to die. They very much had an accidental, sudden death too. And then the Joker's wife did. And then we see another one of the act like that, that's sudden, that's random, that's unexpected, and that doesn't conform to any sort of dramatic reasoning in the shooting of Barbara Gordon, which I'm sure we'll talk about in detail later.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like Joker thinks he's figured out the formula to make a madman, and he decides to visit that sort of random, indistinct violence without any poetry to it. This wasn't a thing about vengeance, or even something that had some sort of motivation, like he was trying to steal something from them or something like that. It was just, she opened the door, boom, done. So I think it's interesting to see those parallels there, for sure. It's a good story. I love this story.
I do.
I love this story. But you know what else I love, Anne-Marie?
What?
Our Patreon. Why don't you tell people about our Patreon?
Over at patreon.com/universebox, you can help take care of us on our podcast. It's a way that you can do a monthly donation starting at 10 cents to help support all of our podcasts. Legends of Gotham, We're So Lost, the occasional Universe Box special, Bill's books, my website, all sorts of craziness over there. For just as low as 10 cents a month, you can help support us, up our equipment, up our hosting, do fun little things, patron hangouts, which we're going to be scheduling our August one sooner rather than later.
Very sooner.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, and right now, it fell down a little bit, although
I see that.
we got our full payment this month, so I feel like it's
somebody withdrawed after.
No, I feel like it's just because I don't have any notifications for it either. I check it right around the time. So I think it's just taking a while to catch up. But right now it says we have 24 patrons giving us $109 a month. That should be like 27 patrons giving us about $120 some bucks a month.
Dude, at some point we were at like 300.
Yeah. But you can be one of the. You can help us get back up to
Help
300.
us get up there.
Yeah, and you don't
We
have
can
to
do
chip
some
in
cool-
much. 10 cents, a buck,
Yeah.
etc.
Who doesn't have $1 a month? Okay, put away the Starbucks once this month. Send us $3.50. You're done.
That'd be
That's all you
sweet.
need. That's
That'd be
all we
sweet.
need. Buy me a Starbucks.
If you want to buy a Starbucks, go to patreon.com/universebox. Again, that's patreon.com/universebox.
And remember to think outside.
Okay, I guess we should get back to the main
Yes.
discussion here again real quick. Let's see here. Or, come out to Tampa Bay Comic-Con and
yes.
buy us a coffee.
Buy us a cocktail.
Yeah,
Buy us a cocktail.
A coffee cocktail.
Ooh.
Like an Irish coffee with Baileys.
Ooh.
That'd be good. Okay, so I have some questions about
You always have questions.
I'm just asking questions about the comedian Joker. First of all, how long do you think the Joker and his wife had been together? It doesn't seem like long since he's struggling to make something of himself. And her biggest reason for loving him is because he's good in the sack. I read it as sort of a quick romance where she got knocked up and things went south really quick.
Really?
Do you agree with that?
No,
or
I don't.
You don't?
I must not have. I mean, I think she was just trying to make light of his stress. She was trying to comfort him by saying things like that. She looked at him with true love and adoring. Like she didn't care that they were that poor.
Yeah.
She didn't care that he was failing at his dreams. I think she was just happy he was doing his dreams. She's like, I'll talk to the lady. She'll let us slide a little longer. She likes me. She feels bad for me because she doesn't like him, but that's irrelevant because it works to their favor in that way. I completely thought she was like for all I know, they've been together for years, maybe off and on or something.
Yeah.
Childhood friends who grew up and got married, something like that.
See, I think maybe another part of the reason I sort of thought this about them is just because he's so paranoid about losing her. It just felt to me like he wasn't very confident in the relationship as it stood. And I mean, obviously, things weren't going great for them. They were living in the
No.
slums. They had a baby on the way. His comedy career wasn't going well. But at the same time, it felt like he wasn't prepared to depend on her. And I think that's kind of what led him down the criminal path too. Is just he didn't think he could keep her unless he was successful in something and got her out of there. And he didn't. I don't think he necessarily believed her when she said, that it didn't matter to her.
Interesting.
But
Because I'm guessing that she just came from a more well-to-do family or something like that, and she probably got shunned from her people for getting married to him and all of that, which makes him have to feel like he has to work twice as hard, even though she chose him and the life that they have together. This is a very male's perspective, female's perspective, I think, on I'm seeing the happy and the love, and you're like, nah. They just got knocked up.
I'm just saying like, and I don't think it's like a male or a female thing. Like I just, it's two different perspectives on the same situation. Okay. Like I'm saying, I feel like that's where the Joker's coming from. And yeah, I agree with you that his wife is coming from a place of honesty and love and all that kind of stuff. I just don't think he has enough faith in it, which makes me think...
He doesn't have faith in himself is what it is. He
Yeah.
doesn't have... It's not that he doesn't have faith in her. He doesn't have enough faith in himself to believe what she says.
Yeah. What's kind of weird about this, though, is that, in the beginning part that they tacked on that we'll talk about in a few minutes.
You like how we keep pushing
you
that
have
aside.
cell phones and iPads and this, that, and the other. And then this flashback, as it does in the original comic book, feels like it's set in the 40s or something.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of like, I guess that's very much like Gotham, too. It's kind of an anachronistic.
You have no idea when it is. Yeah.
Okay, so I interpreted it that the two criminals who hired the Joker to be the Red Hood also killed his wife. Like, I think they're the ones responsible. It's for one, it's described as a 1,000,000 to 1 shot accident. And I feel like they did it because they wanted to make sure that the Joker didn't have a reason to back out. They felt like if he had a wife at home, even though he had already given her the excuse, he wouldn't be able to go through with it because, she would confront him on it or something like that. And they were just like, okay, well, we're going to kill him anyway. Why not kill his wife now to make sure he shows up and puts on the Red Hood? Which
I didn't catch any of that.
which is kind of counter to your point saying that, it was a complete accident.
Well, that's all the information we're given.
Yeah, exactly. I just that was just sort of my interpretation of it, and they were, although I guess you could make the case that they were a little like, when the cops showed up, they were going for their gun and stuff just in case. But at the same time, like I feel like that's something completely within these guys' characters.
Oh, it is completely within their characters. It's just I didn't catch that.
And if nothing else, it would just make it even more tragic that if he wasn't trying to make things better, that his wife would have lived, know. And I can also imagine if he realized that after the fact, that would have made him that much
more crazy.
Yeah, yeah. I never picked up that on the fact in the original comic, and it said pretty explicitly in both, I think, but that the Joker used to be a lab assistant. Now that makes a lot of sense because maybe that's where he picks up the skills he needed to make his Joker Venom in most versions of the story, because he seems to have an unlimited supply of this magical smiling chemical stuff. And it makes sense that he would have, if he was a lab assistant, particularly in that plant, where the chemical that turned him into the Joker was stored, that he would have had the exact expertise needed to make
the stuff that makes people go like this.
Exactly.
Okay. I never really understood that. Yeah, we made a cheesy smile. Yeah. Congratulations for figuring it out.
Okay, so let's see here. We already discussed this.
We did that one already, yes.
Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit too, just briefly, about the Joker's song. He has this big number. What is it? I go loony. And it was okay. Like, I thought Mark Hamill did a fine job with it. But it was all a little normal sounding to me, maybe a little macabre, but it was pretty normal overall. When I was reading the comic book, I always pictured or heard something in my head that was much darker and trippy, maybe with the intensity of Pink Floyd, but without the melody. Okay. Just a song that would literally drive you mad to hear it.
Okay.
But this was a show tune. This was a straight up show tune. It was still absurd. It was a little mind bending and everything, but overall, I was a little disappointed in it. I thought they could have done it. I don't know. They should have hired like the guys from Tool or something to write it. I'm sure they would have. Like, I'm
sure.
So many like hard rock musicians.
Love Batman and Joker.
Love Batman and particularly this story. So I'm sure they could have got
anybody.
I don't know, Danzig or some crazy whacked out wackadoo rock star. ICP? Dude, ICP.
That's like perfect. They should have been his backup. They should have been the little midgets.
They should have been.
Scary midgets.
Oh, no. You think people were upset about this story being off of interpretation from the actual comic book? Now, wait until you throw ICP in the mix. But yeah, so I was a little disappointed. I mean, it was a fine job. I'll probably listen to the song again.
I'm sure.
It just wasn't what I expected.
Yeah.
Okay, and something that nobody expected.
Batgirl!
How much Batgirl was in this story. Because Batgirl actually never appears in the original comic book. Barbara Gordon does. Batgirl never does.
Oh, okay.
Because at this point in the comics, I believe she had...
already quit?
She had been stopped being Batgirl like years before. And she was... I think she was a senator at this point in the comic book story.
Obviously. Okay, well, that could change a lot of stuff. Or she was studying to
be or something.
Yeah, so she wasn't just a librarian with a very gay friend.
That was her original. Well, not with the gay friend because it was the 80s. Whatchamacallit? Like, no, she was a librarian for a lot of it, but then they kind of moved her on to be a senator and stuff like that.
Interesting. Okay, so I get why they felt the need to include this story in the movie. I get that. Kind of makes sense. They're trying, but it could have been shorter. All they're doing is establishing the relationship between Batman and Barbara Gordon. Excuse me. And that could have been done in a 5 to 10 minute sequence. We didn't need the whole big, long, drawn out story. I feel like it would have been almost more worthwhile to have a scene or two to establish the relationship with Batman and Commissioner Gordon. We all know it's there, but you don't get the visualization of it.
Yeah.
Just like that, I mean, Batman and Barbara Gordon, Batman and Batgirl, they have a relationship. Why wouldn't, if you felt the need to make the connection between Batgirl and Barbara Gordon, you could have done a scene of that, but you didn't need 25-minute long story with Paris, France. So it was weird. However, maybe they were just padding it out so it could be a movie. and more worthwhile for the short release in theaters.
Yeah,
That was part of my thought on it.
I don't feel like in the context of the original story,
Yeah.
or even in this version of the story, because it's a pretty accurate adaptation.
Yeah.
That it even matters that she's Batgirl. I mean, it adds an extra layer of tragedy to it.
It does.
It doesn't really matter that it's Batgirl.
And you know, they didn't even need to have her, I mean, they could have had a relationship between Bruce and Barbara Gordon. It didn't have to be Batman and Batgirl.
Yeah.
We didn't have to make the long jump. We could have made a short one there. And, you know, it could have been, you know, Batman showing up.
It could have been a relationship.
Even with the phone call, a friend asked me to do something. Yes, that friend. That was almost enough.
Yeah.
That would have been enough.
It could have been a relationship between Bullock and Batman. And then, you know, Bullock comes over because Bullock's over there at the commissioner's, like, dealing with some issues. And, you know, then the Joker gets him. And then Batman mourns the loss of Bullock, who he had a very special relationship. Okay.
We're just going to walk away from that now.
We'll walk away from that.
Back up
Sorry,
slowly.
that's my own fan fiction. My own fan fiction throwing up here. I obviously I wanted to talk a little bit about a page worth of notes about this too.
Oh my gosh, you really.
Yeah, the whole back.
I'm just gonna sit here and drink.
Story. No, feel free to jump in and jump all over me. By the way, Bobby in the chat room says he originally pictured the Joker song like a Looney Tunes song, which I could see.
So it was definitely more what Bobby was thinking than you.
Definitely. Okay, so you know, it was an okay story, but this story that they tacked onto the beginning of it, written by Brian Azzarello, who is actually one of my favorite comic book writers. I think he wrote probably my favorite Lex Luthor story besides Elliot S. Magan, like ever.
Oh, here we go.
But you know, this addition to the story was completely unnecessary to the story of The Killing Joke. It was obviously added, I feel, to placate some common and I'd say personally unjustified criticisms about Barbara Gordon's treatment in the original comic book.
Okay.
One thing that kind of leads me to believe this, there's a lot of kind of dog whistles to common criticisms throughout the thing, because yeah, exactly.
Oh, I can't whistle.
No, but you know, a lot of, you know, the term fridge gets thrown around and this, that, and the other. The villain is this thinly painted typical man that would be more at home in a 70s action drama than a modern film. I feel like, well, I mean, obviously there's a lot of badass Batgirl action. Like a big chunk of the story, probably 15 minutes of the story is just fight sequences.
Yeah, which is a lot.
Yeah. And then, you know, Batman says something about Paris France objectifying Batgirl, which is another common criticism to the original story. And then even like going back to that whole sort of caricature thing with Paris France, he asked her if that's that time of the month or whatever. And it just felt like we need to give Batgirl this stereotypical man to beat down for half an hour before we get into the story, so people won't weigh these same criticisms against our movie that they did against the original story. And I feel like it was kind of pandering, and I feel like probably both crowds, the people who are fine with the original story and the way it played out, and the people who are critical of it, I feel like both probably left this a little unsatisfied. Like I feel like they did it to please everybody and they pleased nobody.
Yeah, they really pleased nobody with this.
But you know, and I just, you know, back to that criticism, that original criticism to the story. My big problem with it is that, you know, people say that she got the short shrift in the original story, but that's kind of the point of the original story. The shooting is, as I said earlier, this random act of violence. Now, it's shocking to the viewer because it was supposed to be. It's supposed to be a shocking moment. It's supposed to hit us in the gut like Barbara gets hit in the gut with a bullet.
She didn't get in the gut. She got.
Yeah.
Ouch.
But you know, it's supposed to affect us. We're supposed to have negative emotion towards it. You know, and one of the reasons it's shocking is because after years running around as Batgirl, facing off against all these villains, she gets Scott hanging out at home with Dad, like having some tea and working on his supervillain scrapbooks and everything.
I want a supervillain scrapbook.
You know, just the way it goes down in the context. I mean, obviously, if you didn't have the context of her being Batgirl, it might lose a little bit, but I don't think it would lose that much. It just makes the Joker even scarier that any moment this evil clown could show up at your door in a Hawaiian shirt and, you know, cripple you. And, you know, yes, it's a means to affect the main character. Another common complaint is that, you know, she was fridged, aka she was killed to motivate the main character, and that's bad because reasons. But you know, it's yes, that's exactly what happened. You know, she gets shot to affect both the actions and the motivations of Batman, who's the main character of the story, and Commissioner Gordon, who's a secondary main character and sort of a catalyst,
the star of the show.
Well, a catalyst for Batman. Batman's, you know, changing throughout the story, but and he's also kind of a secondary character too, who gets a lot of the short shrift in service of Batman's story. You know, secondary characters are there to affect the main character in the plot. That's their entire purpose in the story, or otherwise this would just be Batman and Joker, you know, on stage by themselves for an hour or whatever, you know, that's how stories work, kind of. And I think it's short-sighted to say that killing off a secondary character or harming a secondary character in order to provide progression to the main character story or to the overall plot of the story. I just think that's kind of missing the point of how stories work and how they...
You don't understand how the stories work.
And how they affect us emotionally as readers and viewers and everything like that. I mean, they're designed to work that way. You know, all that being said, though, I thought as a standalone story, the first half hour or so, I thought it held together pretty well. It was actually, I feel like it was a pretty decent pilot for if they did a adult-oriented Batman the Animated Series reboot. Not just adult-oriented in terms of, like, you know, blood and curse words and sex, but in themes too. Because, okay, so this is one of the big controversial parts of the entire thing. Is that, you know, Batman and Batgirl sleep together.
We're just glaze over that.
Yeah, no, but I loved the whole one-night stand thing between them. Both characters, I felt, acted in character, especially Batman with this awkward avoidance after the fact. And, you know, these two are superheroes, but by showing them doing this, you're allowing them not only to be superheroes, but to be humans and to make mistakes and have those consequences carry over and not just waving them away. And they have to deal with the awkward reality of the fact that they've had this very professional yoga relationship for so long, and they went past that, and now they can't go back, and they can't really go forward either, just because of the nature of who they are as people. You know, and I thought it was really interesting, really human, really complicated, really cool to see that. You know, I just what did you think of that overall? Because you don't have a lot of attachment one way or the other. Right?
I really don't. I'm not sure. I mean, it kind of makes sense because working so closely together, you know, stuff like that happens.
Yeah.
But she was harping out a lot more in her head than he was, to the best of our knowledge. Because
you never know with Batman.
You never know with Batman, but
he is a known ladies' man, though.
That was what I was going to say. Is Bruce gets around. He knows he can whoever he wants. So I think there was a conscious decision on his part, even to go along with it. But excuse me, he may have been more into it because she flipped him.
Yeah.
She completely took him down and flipped him. And for somebody to be able to do that is pretty cool. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't feel one way or the other. They're two adults. They don't understand what happens.
Yeah. You know, one other thing that about the whole situation is, he's a ladies' man, but Bruce is the ladies' man. Well,
Batman is not.
Yeah. And the thing is, you know, there's an interpretation of this character that, you know, Bruce is the mask and Batman's the real person. And he doesn't, except for, you know, a random Catwoman or Talia al Ghul, he doesn't really let people behind the cowl. Well, I mean, he keeps it. Yeah, he keeps the cowl on when he's Bruce Wayne and he's having all these, flings with socialites and everything. But at the same time, they can show up and Alfred sends them on their way because he has bat stuff to do. But Batgirl's one person who I think in this version knows who he is.
I think so too.
Yeah, and knows who he is, and it sees behind that mask, and once he realizes he's let someone behind that mask, he's like, okay, we can't do this, because I also feel like if he does that, he feels if he does that, then he will be less effective in his mission. Actually, you see that a bit, because the second
she had to help him.
Well, the second she calls him and makes him confront everything that happened, he's so inattentive that Paris, France blows up his Batmobile. He gets the drop
Butch
on
style.
him. Yeah. Yeah.
He went straight Butch style.
So the second Batman lets his guard down because of this real emotional thing happening, he's ineffective in his role as Batman, which is pretty interesting. But, overall, my one last statement on this, sorry, I know it's a very long point. It's my last one, though. As much as this story didn't belong to The Killing Joke, which is a story about Batman and the Joker, I thought it was nice that at least it added a little bit of motivation to Batman as he stares into the abyss and pushes it to the limit, as they say in the movie, as he becomes proactive concerning his Joker problem. It gives him just a little bit more in-story reason to push it a little harder than he normally does.
Good.
That's all I have to say about it. I'm still going to step off my soapbox.
All right. Over in the chat room, Bobby says the scary thing... Oh, sorry. Lies. Rebecca says the scary thing about what Joker does to Babs in The Killing Joke is that it could be a real crime that happens to any of us. Absolutely. You answered the door because somebody knocked. You're thinking it's UPS.
Or she thought it was her friend, I think.
She thought it was her friend, but I'm just saying, you're answering your door. Standing there talking, and it's, even more creepy that you're literally talking about the man on the other side of the door.
Yeah, and as audience members, I feel like it should appall us. It should terrify us.
That's the point.
Yeah, that's kind of the point of it. And like we went back talking about the other stuff, about all these random life-changing things that happen to all of the characters in this story. Yeah. That's kind of a big theme in the entire story, that these random things can happen. You can have one bad day, like Barbara did, like Thomas and Martha Wayne did, like the comedian did. And it can just completely screw up your whole life.
Yeah.
Or maybe not screw it up so much if you end up becoming a super hacker.
Super hacker. Speaking of the super hacker, the Oracle reveal. Okay, so you can tell that there's no way that Barbara is going to give up on the crime fighting that she's been now a part of for years. A, because Batman basically told her to, or because B, she's paralyzed from the waist down. Neither of these things are stopping her. She's a tough B. So while she no longer has the physical capacity to chase down the bad guys, because she could have just reinvented herself, put her hair up and make a new costume and be on with her life. But she is more than capable of doing the intellectual work towards the end. Now that she's been the direct victim of this violence, it increases her motivation to go this route. Like, she was probably already, building this closet, this closet of computers, her own version of the Bat Cave. I don't know, the Oracle Cave. Does it have a name?
Her closet,
the Oracle closet. She just has that motivation, just like Batman, because something happened to him, his family, and even more so with her, like, her poor dad. I think that even if she hadn't become paralyzed, she would have found a way to stay involved, whether it was as this version of the Oracle or something else. And she was already showing these skills because, like, she's like checking out traffic cams. She's like, got him, done. So I thought that was pretty.
Like I said, the character historically was a librarian, which makes total sense to go this route.
Research.
But yeah, you don't know very much about the Oracle.
That's about all I got. You told me that's the Oracle. I was like, okay.
I did think the Oracle scene at the end was a little weird too, just because, like, putting the whole big thing at the beginning, putting that at the end, it says to the audience, this is a story about Batgirl, when it totally isn't.
It definitely does.
It's a story about Batman and the Joker fundamentally, but at the same time,
they made it a story about Batgirl, though. They made this be a movie about Batgirl and her family versus Batman and the Joker, which is what it's meant to be.
Yeah,
I know things.
I will say though that you know, if one super positive thing, even if you hate this story, came out of this story, it's the 25, 26 years or so that the Barbara Gordon character spent as Oracle, because it was some of the most compelling uses of the character ever. And I've tried to get back into it since they you know, healed her paralysis, and
did they?
She's back in the Batgirl costume, running around and everything.
Good to know.
And I tried to get it because I used to love Batgirl.
I could see that.
I used to own Batgirl's origin comic where she fights Killer Moth from the 60s. But you know, so I loved Batgirl, and I tried to get back into her comic, and I was like, this is just not as compelling as when she was Oracle. And so I think, you know, even if you hate the story, you got to give it some respect for bringing that into the mythos and growing Barbara's character out that way.
Okay. Over in the chat room, Rebecca says, it could be argued that Oracle, when she exists, is the most powerful character in DC Comics. Nice. I'm intrigued.
I wouldn't say the...
Them's be fighting words with Bill, though.
No, like, I wouldn't say the most powerful, because, I mean, I guess it depends on what kind of power you're talking about. Like, she can definitely be the most effective, and she can... But the thing is, Oracle, on her best of days, 9 times out of 10, she's still a hacker behind a computer where you can only do so much, but at the same time, she can work as sort of like...
You can do a lot from behind a computer.
Well, I was going to say she can work as sort of the hyper brain for all these people who can, like, get out there into the action, fight the Joker, things like that.
She plants the seeds.
Which is just as good. Yeah. Yeah. And Derby Kid says in the chat room, she controls all the information, Bill.
Exactly.
And she probably said it exactly like that.
She did. Yeah.
But, okay, so...
Maybe the gesture.
Okay, well, maybe my darkest arbitrary scale yet.
It's awful. I'm sorry. I can't control him.
Okay. Let's see here. Maybe I should back away from this. No,
just do it and get it over with.
Okay.
The show's called The Killing Joke. Like,
Anne-Marie, out of 7 severed vertebrae, how many severed vertebrae do you give this episode?
4.5.
4.5? Movie,
not an episode. It shouldn't have had to have you explain so much to me. And it did feel like 2 separate shows.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like a movie. It felt like I was binge watching Batman the Animated Series, I guess. It was that. It wasn't... It didn't feel like one cohesive movie.
Yeah, that's the thing, is another problem with them tacking this Batgirl stuff on is... At its heart, it's a very simple, straightforward story. So much so that it really only took up about, 45 minutes of screen time? And it should be. But because you throw in all this Batgirl stuff, it just makes it... Well, there's not... Bobby in the chat room says such a small number of
There's only that many vertebrae.
There's not very many. But... Yeah, you know, it just confuses it for people who aren't familiar with the story. You know, so because you're thinking, oh, the story's about Batgirl, but it's not.
They made it her though.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. Okay, as for me, I'm gonna give it 5 severed vertebrae and a See, I usually do something.
There's 33 vertebrae.
Okay, 33 vertebrae.
Yeah,
but
like
she only got hit in the stomach, so it probably only
cervical.
So it probably only hit a few.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cervical.
But I'm gonna give it 5 severed vertebrae. 5.5 maybe.
5.5.
If you can do a 0.5 vertebrae. Just because I thought it was a really strong adaptation of the story, of the story as a whole. I thought that the Batgirl stuff detracted from it, although I did kind of like it as its own thing. Like if they redid a animated or an adult-oriented Batman the Animated Series, like with that kind of flavor to it, I'd be there every week, for sure. But I do think, though, the piece as a whole suffered. And I had some issues with the animation, too. Like that scene in the bar with the Joker and the criminals. Like, his hands look all weird. Like, they're all like... So yeah, I thought there were a few problems with the animation too, but a lot of it kind of reminded me of Batman the Animated Series.
Yeah.
For sure, like some
Well,
of
I
the
mean, it
panning
definitely
stuff.
felt like it had like 3 different animation styles. So that was a little.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
that added to my jarring problem.
Could be.
Could be.
And Bobby in the chat room gives it 5 vertebrae and a chunk. But you know what? We're going to hear more about what Bobby thinks because we're going to play a voicemail from him. If you want to send us a voicemail about Suicide Squad or respond to our criticism about The Killing Joke, legendsofgotham@gmail.com. You can send us an email or an MP3. Or you can hit us a voicemail, 424-274-2352. Or you can even leave us a Facebook thing over at facebook.com/groups/Legends of Gotham. But we're going to find out what Bobby thought about it right now. Take it away, Bobby.
Hey guys, it's Bobby.
Hey.
All right, so I just got done watching and reading The Killing Joke because after watching it, I felt like it's been such a long time since I read The Killing Joke, so let me go back and refresh myself. And I was very surprised. I thought there was more in the book between Barbara and Bruce, but there's very little, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a bit that's implied there, but like nothing like they show in the movie.
No.
And actually, I think that was a rather welcome addition. I mean, not only did it obviously pad the film for time,
Yeah.
because without that it would be like 40 minutes or something, but it didn't just pad for time. It actually like lent more to the story and gave us more of an emotional impact when what happened to Barbara did happen to Barbara and how Bruce reacted and everything around that. So I thought they did well there. Another thing I want to mention is the art style. The art style was it wasn't lifted from the page at all. It wasn't lifted from the page. There were obviously some scenes that were lifted from the page, but
like a few shots look pretty close to the comic, like when the Joker gets turned into the Joker and he turns around. That's straight out of the comic. But yeah, agreed.
As far as the art style itself, I'm not going to say it was directly from the animated series, but it definitely felt like almost a weird like meld between the two, between the art of the book itself and the animated series. And I found it rather fitting because I don't even know percentages, but I mean, the Joker played a huge part in the animated series, rightfully so. And so over the years, people have looked at The Killing Joke, being a one shot and being almost like this like final story between Joker and Batman. And I really, like bringing in Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill and Tara Strong and using a similar art style really makes it feel like there's more history to all of this and makes you feel like there's history between the characters and where this would all lead. And so I thought that again, lent a lot to the story itself. There was something else I was going to mention. The origin... it really felt like they just hammered home that, like, okay, this is the origin. Now, I know there was the line where the Joker says that I prefer it to be multiple choice, but I really do feel like they didn't show it as multiple choice. And it's not that way in the book either. Yeah, I think the book is even Alan Moore saying this is the origin. And the multiple choice thing was almost thrown in to just be... to quell people who would say like, oh, I don't want there to be an origin. But let's face it. I mean, and as far as origins go, I don't think this is a bad one.
I'll just say that I believe the Joker doesn't have a definitive origin. That all started because of this comic book. Like before it was just like, oh yeah, he's
a Joker.
This schmuck who fell into a vat of acid or whatever. But
Okay.
I thought it's really well thought out. And apparently, from what I've read, the Red Hood character origin type thing almost has connections back to like 1951 stories.
Yeah.
And so it's cool that he would go back that far to try to connect everything. I really liked everything about this right up to the end. For some reason, it worked well in the comic books, but for the whole last scene of them joking in the rain and everything like that, or laughing in the rain, it just didn't play right for me on screen for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know why. It just didn't. It just felt off. Over the years, people have wondered, is this ambiguous? Did he kill Joker? Because like in the book, or even in the movie, it just fades to one laugh, not two laughs. And I choose to think he didn't. Some people think he did. I don't know.
Me.
You know, and in the movie, you don't, even in the comic, you don't see like any like neck snap onomatopoeia type thing or anything. But anyway, now I'm rambling. Overall, I just thought this was really great. Really great adaptation, and scale, I'm going to say out of 1,342 smiling fish, I'm going to give it 1,247. Oh, and to, I guess, like, I didn't really mention it all that much, but of course, over the years, it's been a somewhat provocative story, particular between Barbara and the Joker. And they didn't shy away from that, and kudos to that, and I think they handled it rather well.
Thank you very much, Bobby.
Thanks, sir.
And over in the chat room, Derby Kid says, why else would it be called the Killing Joke? Very good point.
Extremely good point. But
Very
that
good
was my
point.
question in my head. I was like, but nobody died.
Yes.
I guess they did.
Paris France died.
Paris France did.
The most important character of all, Paris France. But thank you very much, Bobby. As we mentioned before, you can come see Bobby and us live at Tampa Bay Comic-Con.
Oh, that was nice. That was a good transition.
Yeah, it'll be Sunday, August 7th at the Tampa Bay Comic-Con, room 12 at 11:30 a.m. We hope to see you there. And if you're there,
please.
Definitely, I mean, be there for the panel. We'll ask you some trivia questions.
Totes.
But feel free to come catch us right after we get done. We'd love to meet some of you. Love to talk to some of you.
I know. It feels like we've met less of our Gotham people than we did of our old Greetings from Storybrooke people.
Yeah. So
we'd like to meet you.
It'd be great to meet some Gotham people, and if you're there, please come because
we're a little nervous.
We will do a show to an empty room.
We will,
but we'd rather not.
We're actors. We know what we're doing.
Yeah,
but
although I do think
trivia could be interesting, though.
We do stand a good chance, I think, just because I think we're the only Gotham panel at the entire convention. So if there's Gotham fans there, they're going to be at our panel. Hopefully.
One would hope.
One would hope. But yeah, that's Tampa Bay Comic-Con, Sunday, August 7th, 11:30 a.m., room 12. Hope to see you there. We'll be back next week to talk Suicide Squad. And it'll be a good time to be had.
Yes, it will.
Let's see. Derby Kid says in the chat room, a day before someone's birthday. Is that?
Would that be the Derby Kid?
Possibly.
I think it might be.
While we wait for an answer, Anne-Marie, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at DeSimone or check out my blog, not my blog, crunchycrafty.com.
And as for me, you can follow me on Twitter at Bill Meeks. You can follow all of the stuff we do at universebox.com. And I highly recommend you go to join our group, facebook.com/groups/Legends of Gotham.
True dat.
A lot of activity going on
I know.
over there.
It's
Lots
so
of
much
talking.
busier than over it. She's like, my.
Yes, it is Derby Kid's birthday the day after. So everyone wish her a happy birthday on Twitter at Derby Kid. All right, guys. Well, we're going to get out of here. So join us next time for more
Legends of Gotham. I gotta do something different.
Do what different?
Well, I always go burr, burr in the first one because I have issues.
One bad day.
I want to be a librarian.
Sanity Clause.
Yoga. See, I'd already said it. I couldn't take it back and do it again.
Batman, Yoga Master. He'll make you see fireworks. All right, guys. Thank you so much for coming out live. We're going to go ahead and head out of here really quickly, like Ghost. Ghost quick? Yeah.
Depends on the ghost, I guess.
We'll say they're quick.